Hi, I'm going to show you how to make the really popular three-tiered naked cake. You can use them for weddings, but also they can be used for birthday celebrations or just a summer party, really. They look absolutely fantastic. They're very easy to make, but there is a difference between having a homemade naked cake and a professionally homemade naked cake, and the differences are we have to get all of the sponges absolutely even, and they all have to be the same depth. Sometimes you see photographs of naked cakes and they're all different sizes and they don't look as professional as they should. So I'm going to show you today how to get all of those techniques right so that you have the perfect cake. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what cakes you need. Now you can see that I've actually got 5 cakes here, and it's only going to be a 3-tier cake. But what I've done is I've baked my the 2 bottom tiers, the bigger tiers. This is a 10-inch round, this is an 8-inch round, and this is a 6-inch round. And the 2 bottom tiers I've baked separately. Okay, so I've taken my mixture and I've halved it and I've baked them separately. The reason that I do that is so that I can get as much depth with each of the cakes as I possibly can, because we want it to be nice and tall. So that's the first thing, is to bake 2 of each of them, and then the little one at the top, my 6-inch round, actually I have just baked that all in one because it's actually small enough to be able to take it. The reason that I do these, as I say, separately is because if I put all of this mix into a 10-inch round, number one, it would be in there for hours and hours and hours, and number 2, it would dome at the top. We wouldn't get such a level bake. Another thing as well, I don't know if you noticed, but this one is much browner on the top than this one. I baked them differently just to show you the difference. This one I just put it in the oven and I baked it normally. These ones, I put some foil on the top, over the top of the tin, before I put it in the oven. And as you can see, it's baked beautifully, but it hasn't got a hard crust on it, which is really good and really handy when it comes to cutting these, because obviously the harder the crust on here, the tougher it is to get through when you're cutting them. So I think that that's a really good tip, just to put your foil over the top before you put them in the oven. You can take it off if you're having trouble and it's not cooking properly. See, I always find it cooks perfectly because it almost steams it. But if you're finding it's not cooking properly, just take off the foil for the last 10 minutes. Okay, so let me put these ones over here. I'm going to just show you how to level out these bottom ones. Now, you can use a normal knife, a normal bread knife, and you can use a ruler and you can go around and measure all the heights and everything. That's fine. But I have a fantastic little tool which takes away all of those problems about whether or not it's even, and it's called a cake leveler. Okay, you might have seen one of these. Cakecraft World do sell them, obviously. What they are little notches, I don't know if you can see, little notches on the sides, almost like a coat hanger. And this is a suspended piece of wire. And the idea of these is that you put your wire on the same height either side, and this obviously then acts like a cheese wire, which cuts through your sponge and basically makes it even all the way through. So this is a fantastic product if you're doing a naked cake. So I've actually worked out already that the highest that I can get all my cakes, so what we basically want to do is put it against the cake and work out, can you see here close up? You can work out, if I put it there, I am cutting off the top, so I'm going to have it nice and even, but I'm not wasting too much of the sponge. And the same here. Okay? So, the way to use this is, now I'm left-handed, so I'm doing it round the other way. If you're right-handed, you do exactly the same thing, but you just turn and use your right hand. But I'm going to use my left hand. Now, obviously it's not serrated, it's like a cheese wire, okay? So the whole idea is that you push it through. But in order to be able to push it through, you do sort of need to saw it a little bit. And can you see, actually this is quite heavy, this sponge. So the weight of the sponge, it's not letting it move. But as we come towards the end here, the walls here of the sponge are going to start weakening. Okay, so I like to put my hand through the cheese wire just to help it stay intact, because can you see here it's wanting to come away? Yeah, so if I put my fingers there to support it, you get a much cleaner cut. Another trick as well, make sure that these both stay on the workboard at the same time, because it's all well and good, but if you're cutting across like that, obviously it's not going to be very even. So I've gone across. Now I'm just going to, a couple of times, just go backwards and forwards just to make sure we've got a really nice clean cut, and then take off the top. Now let me show you exactly the same thing again. I'm going to go from here, this is my lowest side. Now already I can feel that this is tougher to do because I haven't put any foil on it. This was really nice and almost sticky because it had been steamed, but this one I've got to give it a little bit more welly actually to get through, because it's dried out the sponge a little bit more not having the foil. So I'm having to use my fingers to support the wall a little bit more. So this action of sawing but pushing through. Now do practice this, don't give up with it. I know that I make it look easy, but I've been doing it a long time. I've cut a lot of cakes like this, so don't think just because you're not doing it as quickly as me that you can't do it. Just keep practicing. So backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, and take off the top. Okay. And there, very, very easily, without really much fuss and much measurement, we've got two perfectly even sponges. And now all we have to do is do that with the others. Okay, so let's talk about how we're actually going to display the cake once it's been made, because you have to think about that right at the beginning so that you put your cakes on the right boards. Now firstly, each cake is going to sit on a thin cake board. Make sure that the cake board that you have it on is an inch smaller than your actual cake, because the worst thing is when you actually layer up the tiers, you can see the silver cake board around the bottom. It really doesn't look very good. So thin board and an inch smaller. Okay, so that's for the top tier and the middle tier. Now, if you're travelling with the cake, then you need to put it onto a thick cake drum. That's if you're travelling with the cake. If you're not travelling with the cake and you're actually making it for home, then you can get a bit elaborate with your stand. We could use, I mean, I found this beautiful stand in an antique shop and I love it. I use it for naked cakes. So what I would normally do, you see, is that I would put that on the top there, and I see it fits perfectly, the 10-inch round, and then I could layer it up and actually bring it out into a dinner party, and everyone goes, "Whoa, it's amazing!" But actually, it's taken me about half an hour. So that's a really, really good idea if you're not travelling with it. But if you are travelling with it, then obviously you can't travel with it like this unless you've got somebody on the passenger seat doing that, and I wouldn't advise it. But what I would suggest is that you use a bigger board like this. Now, if you're doing that, then obviously we don't need this board, okay? So this one goes straight onto the middle here. Now, I say the middle, I'm actually going to move it so that it's slightly off centre on the board. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm thinking ahead, and I'd quite like some flowers or some fruit to come to the front of the cake, and if you've got it in the middle of the board, then that doesn't work very well. So I'm actually going to move it slightly so that it is off centre. Okay, that's the first thing. Now I've got some buttercream here that I've already mixed up. Now, quite stiff buttercream, we don't want it really sloppy, because if it's sloppy it will all flop out the sides, and we really don't want that. We want to be able to spread it though, okay? So you need to have it so that it's obviously room temperature. You don't want it out of the fridge. And this is freshly made today, that's it. So normal buttercream, you've probably got a recipe for buttercream. If you haven't, have a look at, well, you can look them up on the internet. My buttercream recipe is basically 1 part butter to 2 parts icing sugar, stick it in the electric mix and whiz it up for about 5 minutes, okay? Try and use it as soon after you've made it as possible because it's light and fluffy and just nicer. Okay, so a nice palette knife. You probably notice I've just had my palette knife in hot water. It's quite nice to keep it in hot water just so that it's got a little bit of heat on it because it makes the spreading a whole lot easier. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is put a little dollop of buttercream in the middle of my board because that will keep my sponge a lot sturdier. And now I'm going to take a nice big dollop, the technical term, dollop of buttercream, like so. And then with a paddling action, I'm going to spread it all over. I reckon that's about right. Okay, so I reckon I've got probably near on an inch thick of buttercream in there. Okay, now on the other one, on the other cut side, I'm going to put my jam, okay, because what we're going to do is put the jam, put buttercream and over the top, okay? So, buy some jam. Now, if possible, make sure, I mean, it's lovely, homemade jam's lovely with the great big bits of strawberries in it and things like that. Lovely if you're making a scones, etc. But when you're cutting into a cake, it doesn't work well, so try and get a jam that has as little pieces of fruit in it as possible. Even if you can get like like a smooth jam or something like that's good. But this one's quite good, I think. So again, nice, generous dollops of jam. Okay, I've used nearly half the jar there. I want to be able to see this coming out of the cake. It's making me feel really hungry. I need a cup of tea and a slice of this already. Okay. So again, as you can see, I haven't gone right to the edges. But I have made it quite nice and thick because the idea is I'm going to put this on the top here, and when I gently squash, I want that natural like that out the side, so it all sort of really, really nicely squidges out the side. And that's something that you can't really plan. It just happens. So we have to keep our fingers crossed. Okay, now because this cake is completely level, we know it is because we've done all the work beforehand to make sure it is. This should be really, really simple. The hard part is, of course, the bigger the cake, so the bottom tiers, the harder it is just to simply tip it over. Now, I do have a little tip for you. I would put it in the fridge, okay? So before you do all this, put it in the fridge just for 20 minutes to half an hour. The reason we do that, we don't want it to go stale or anything like that, but the reason I do that is because so it's hard, so it doesn't sort of collapse, okay? So you want quite a hard sponge, so I would suggest that you do that. Make sure it's wrapped in cling film first because you don't want it to go stale, obviously. But I haven't done that, so we're really hoping that this works. So over the top and just lay it straight on, like so. Now I'm going to take one of my boards, in fact the board for the next tier up, lay it over the top, and I'm just going to push. And as I push, I can see some designer jam squelching going on, which is absolutely perfect. That's just what I'm looking for. Okay. Good. Okay, so there we have our first layer. Right, I'm just going to put some dowels into the bottom of this cake tier now. The reason that we use the plastic dowels is so when I put the next tier on, it doesn't sink into the cake, so the plastic dowels are supporting it. Really, really simple. I just take one measurement, so I've put one dowel in with my edible pen, just make a measurement of the side, take it out and then cut it. And then we take the measurement of each of the dowels from that original one. Okay, so little mark there. Going to use my scissors, absolutely brilliant for cutting dowels. These are made by the Little Venice Cake Company and they are called their heavy duty scissors, but I don't know if you can see, it's got a perfect little round cutout in the metal scissors there, which acts perfectly. If I go round and round and round, I'm just making an indent in my mark, round and round and round, and then snap. As easy as that. Again, you can go online and find diagrams for where to put your dowels, etc. Just put 4 squares and then one in the middle. That's enough. Okay, so there we go. So that's how to dowel the first tier of the cake. I'm now going to put the other 2 layers on the top as I've done before. I just wanted to remind you, make sure that because of the other tiers that you're doing, make sure you have on the bottom your cake board, which is going to be 1 inch smaller. Okay, just don't forget, and I'll be back with the other 2 tiers done. So as you can see, I've done exactly the same with all of the tiers, the middle and the top as well. So I've put the buttercream in and the jam and then squidged them all together, not forgetting to put the cake boards under each of the tiers and also not forgetting to dowel them as well. So there's 5 dowels in here, 5 dowels in here, obviously none needed on the top. This is the really yummy part, and that is crystallizing some fruit. There's all different ways of crystallizing fruit. You know, if you're a cordon bleu chef, then there's obviously a certain way of doing it, but we're not doing cordon bleu chefing here, we're just decorating our naked cake. So we are simply I'm actually using here a Meri-White mix, so an egg white powder mixed with water mix. If you don't have that, I mean, it's what you use to make royal icing. If you don't have that, then you could just use a sugar syrup. You could put some sugar in with some water, put it in the microwave or on the stove, melt it down, and then just use it. What we're looking for is, you can't really use water though, because we are crystallizing our fruit. As you can see, we're putting the moisture, painting it onto the fruit, and then we're dipping it in the caster sugar. What happens if you use water is when this dries, it will just all come off. Okay, so we must use something that's got a sticky quality to it. So I've got all of my fruits here, as you can see. Usually you'll probably get fruits of the season. I've got strawberries here, blueberries, blackberries, grapes and cherries. I've also got some mint, and also another really, really fashionable thing at the moment to use is rosemary, and I absolutely love the smell of rosemary. It's gorgeous. So let's do a little bit of crystallizing. So simple. We don't want to soak our fruit in the moisture, because otherwise what happens is it will just keep soaking the sugar up and we won't be able to ever see the sugar. This one I've put a little bit too much on, so I have to keep dipping it in the sugar. Can you see? So I get that crystallized look. I personally think the best look is this one here with the grapes, where I've just dabbed a little bit of the egg white mix on and just dragged it through the sugar, and it's just picked up on areas. So let me show you how to do that. So I've got some egg white mix onto here. I haven't just put it in, I've been using the same amount on here, so we don't want this dripping wet, we just want it just to you know, be damp but not wet. Caster sugar I'm using here, just drag it through a shallow dish filled with caster sugar, and that literally is it. It couldn't get much easier. Okay, really easy to do it with the grapes. Bit trickier with the soft fruit. You must hold it really, really gently. Just sweep over one part, roll it around in the sugar, and there we have it. Looks like it's been outside and Jack Frost has got it. Break down your grapes into smaller bunches. I've also got some cherries here. Cherries look really, really good. Just a sweep across the cherry. Okay. Blueberries always look really good as well, but because they're so tiny, I just put a sweep and then drop it in. A sweep, then drop it in. Don't soak your don't soak your blueberries because they just will look like big round balls of caster sugar. So in, and then tumble them around in the sugar, and where you've put your egg white mix, it will have caught the sugar. So continue to do this. Don't do all of your fruit. It's nice to have a bit of a mix up. So I'm going to do a little part that's crystallised, and obviously then leave the rest to be a bit more au naturel. With the strawberries, these are really lovely large strawberries. Don't cover the whole strawberry, you don't need to. I'm just going to just do one side of it, down like that, dip it in, bring it up. It's quite nice to have that difference. A little bit of mint here. Again, just paint really delicately over the top and just drag it through, and you'll pick up. And there we have it. So you can make as much crystallised fruit as you like. If you don't want to do any crystallised fruit, then obviously you can completely miss this step and just use just plain old washed fresh fruit. And now I'm going to show you how to attach it to the cake. Hi, so you can see that I've been busy putting all of my crystallised fruit and my fresh fruit onto the side of the cake. Let me just show you how I've done that. I've used a piping bag. I've just used a disposable plastic piping bag. It's got buttercream, the same buttercream that's inside the cake. I've put it in here, just snip the end off. Now this really does have to be done at the venue. So if this is a wedding cake and you're making the wedding cake, I would strongly urge you to take the cake, travel the cake obviously tiered like this, but bare. Take all of your crystallised fruit and everything, take them in Tupperware containers or whatever, and put it together. This really does take minutes. Don't try and be too accurate with this, okay? The beauty of this is that it's supposed to look like it's all tumbling down, and literally just put it wherever you think. The main sort of idea, I think, is make it quite heavy at the top, bring it down, making it look wider as it comes down to the bottom. That's quite a good little tip. Quite like to have a little bit of height at the top. But buttercream obviously is quite a good glue, so the way that I do it really is, like for example, this needs something here, so I'm going to put this, that might be a bit big actually. Let me take a couple off here. That's it. So I'm looking for something that's got a bit of a flat back. The grapes, you see all the sort of bony, woody bits of the grapes, they're going to go to behind, okay, so that we've just got the fruit showing. So in that instance, I would have a really nice large dollop of buttercream and then just stick the woody parts in. Can you see I've got some bits of the buttercream in between showing? So I'll take a little blueberry and I'll just fill that in. Okay, so basically I'm saying that everything, just put it wherever you want to, but there is a sort of pattern to it. Like for example, just stick a grape to a buttercream, and that other one will just stick there nicely with it. This definitely needs something there. So I'm going to take some lovely blackberries. Quite nice as well, to make it look natural, group together all the same fruits. And then when you need to fill in a gap, always make sure you've got blueberries. They're a great little gap filler. Can you see? So very, very simply, you can create this very natural look. But as you can imagine, doing this and then sticking it in the car and driving it, bump, 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 they probably all fall off. So this really should be done at the venue. But I think you'll agree, it looks gorgeous. I've actually added, I'm just dipping it into some more sugar. I've added this mint because it gives a nice edible foliage to the design. So you can just stick that in between. It smells gorgeous. It smells like a mojito, like so. Or if you need something that's a bit spikier, then I've got some lovely rosemary here. Just pull off the ends. And then we can turn into a flower arranger, like so, okay? Gives it a really, really nice natural look. If it's a wedding cake and you do want to put some flowers onto it, you can do that. You can buy these little plastic flower picks, they're called, and what they do is they stick into the cake so that the actual stem doesn't touch the sponge. I've got some lovely pink roses here, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take those leaves off and I'm going to cut it down to, I can't remember what they're called, unfortunately I'm not a flower arranger, but down to the first, I'm going to call it a knuckle or a nodule, yes, and then you've just got that short rose which I can put into the pick, okay, and then I can just push that straight in, and can you see, very, very easily and simply create a really nice design. Now again at the top, actually, now another thing you need to make sure, actually I don't like the way that one is, so I'm going to take that one out and I'm actually going to put it a bit more diagonally, and that's the great thing. No, don't like that either. That's a bit better. Great thing about these picks, you can just take it out and put it back in as you wish. Now make sure that you check with the florist about obviously the safety of putting flowers onto cakes, because some are poisonous, so you don't want to poison the guests. Now again, this is a very, very casual cake. There is no pattern as to where I'm putting these roses, so I'm going to have to turn it around again, but I do think, actually, do you know what, I'm going to take that one out. I don't like that one there, the one that I had, so I'm going to put that one. Okay, so we've got a little bit of flour, we've got lots and lots of fruit. It's quite nice sometimes to just finish off with a nice sprinkle of caster sugar. You can use icing sugar, but I actually quite prefer caster sugar all over the front of the cake. And there you have, very simply and very quickly, I think you'll agree, the most beautiful naked wedding cake. Now, if I move this over here, and when you get to your venue, obviously, I would place it on a stand so that it can stand there in all its glory and wait till the guests tuck into it. So there is our 3-tier naked wedding cake.